So in this one, we're going to be talking about Toji Fushiguro, one of my favorite characters in the series. I just think he's just so awesome, and I'm sure a lot of you do too. And I guess at this point, the only thing that I can really say about him without going into spoilers is that he's Megumi Fushiguro's dad. Because everything that happens with him takes place after what we see in season 1. So at this point, I'm gonna have to go into spoilers, so if you don't want to know what's gonna happen, I suggest you check out now. So Toji Fushiguro was originally Toji Zenin, meaning that he's like a part of one of the big 3 families, but according to him, after he got married, he took his wife's name, which was Fushiguro, and that's also where we get Megumi's current last name, Fushiguro. But going further into his relation with Megumi, at least within the story, at some point in the past, he had met up with Naobito Zenin, and he decided to sell Megumi to the Zenin family when his curse technique were to manifest, which is like around ages 4 through 6. And that raises the question, like, okay, so why is he selling his son to the Zenin family? Well, it's because in his own weird way, he actually does care for his son, because after this sequence, he says that place is useless for someone like me, but for him, referring to Megumi, for someone with potential, it'll be a little better. So he's assuming that, you know, being raised by the Zenin family will be better for him than, you know, being raised by Toji himself. Throughout the little time that we have with Toji, it seems like he's almost like some kind of nihilist or something. He doesn't really care about anything other than just doing whatever he wants, I suppose. And I don't know, in my opinion, it may be like subtly implied that maybe he has some kind of gambling problem or something. Because in one of the first instances that we see Toji, he like meets up with one of the Time Vessel Association members at like a racetrack. And the guy's like, you know, what are you doing here? And Toji says, I'm making money. And then the guy says, I've never seen you win before. And then going further, you know, he just says things like, don't worry, we'll get a return on that money, just like with this race here, holding like a race ticket. And then right after this, we see that he loses the bet that he placed. Again, it's not made explicitly clear that he does have some kind of gambling addiction or something, but it could be there. Also, later on in this sequence, the guy asks him, like, you know, how's Megumi doing? And he says, who's that again? And you might be thinking like, oh, he's just trying to say that to be cool. But a few chapters later, he like remembers what Megumi is. He's like, oh, that means blessing, the name I gave my son. So that goes back to me saying that, like, I don't know, he's just some kind of like weird guy that just doesn't care about anything. But going back to him meeting with that Time Vessel Association member, it's because Toji is like a really powerful assassin, and I guess kind of famous too. He even has like the moniker the Sorcerer Killer, and they contract him to take down the Star Plasma Vessel, who is like the successor to Master Tengen. So now let's get into the stuff that makes Toji like really special and also really powerful at the same time. So aside from his like personality and stuff, another thing that really makes him cool is the fact that he has no cursed energy, but at the same time, he's one of the strongest characters that we've ever seen in the series. So according to Tsukumo, there have been several instances where heavenly restriction has reduced a person's cursed energy to normal levels. But for cursed energy to be completely eradicated, she searched all over the world, and Toji was the only one to have this. But not only that, despite having no cursed energy, he's able to sense curses using his 5 senses. By eliminating all cursed energy, his body became sharpened to the point of where he developed a resistance to curses, which basically makes him superhuman, and that's pretty much true. Like, we've seen other heavenly restricted characters in the series, or just physically strong characters. Toji is probably the strongest that we've seen. Also, along with having 0 cursed energy, that basically makes him invisible to sorcerers. Since they're not able to pick up on anything, he basically can become stealthy at the same time, on top of having insane physical strength. And he uses this to his advantage in multiple fights, like getting this surprise attack on his opponents, like even like Gojo. And like we said, he has superhuman senses, like all 5 of them are enhanced. And this also means that he can like trace odor and like footsteps and things like that. So since he doesn't have any abilities outside of just being like a physical and agile powerhouse, we could just go into like his arsenal, because that's like the big part of his game here. So he has like multiple weapons, but he doesn't like carry them on him in a traditional sense. What he does does is use like this cursed spirit that has some kind of storage ability, which makes it almost like a little pocket dimension in a way. And this cursed spirit can like store itself inside of itself, like, you know, by like eating it in a way. And it becomes like the size of a grape or something, and he swallows it. So once he swallowed this thing, it no longer gives off like cursed energy or can be sensed anymore because he himself doesn't have any. So once it's inside of him, it becomes invisible like he does, because he says he has invisible guts. And it's also this that allows him to like move through barriers while carrying like a whole arsenal of cursed tools. So as for his arsenal, like I said, he has multiple weapons, and he has like some just regular things that have no cursed energy attached to them for, you know, more of a stealth aspect, like a gun or like a regular sword or knife or something. And he does have like a cursed tool sword thing, but like his main weapon is one of the strongest cursed tools, maybe the strongest cursed tool we've ever seen in the series, and it's called the Inverted Spear of Heaven. And its effect is pretty simple: forced stoppage of a cursed technique. Yeah, that's exactly as it sounds. This thing is so powerful that he even defeats Gojo with it, meaning that, yeah, it just bypasses Limitless and just goes right into Gojo. But let's go a little more into how he was able to defeat Gojo, because this is going to be a huge moment in season 2. To make a long story short, he sets up this elaborate plan with the star plasma vessel Rico and puts like a bounty on her with a time limit. So this basically makes Gojo go on a trip for like around 3 days. And at this time, Gojo is constantly using his 6 eyes technique. Like, it's even implied that he's not sleeping or anything. So this is obviously wearing him down and fatiguing him. So on the 3rd day, like after this whole ruse is over and Toji takes the bounty down, Gojo returns with Rico, and it's at this point that Toji just shows up immediately and stabs Gojo with like a regular sword. Going back to what I was saying about how like regular weapons don't have any cursed energy attached to them, so they're invisible just like he is, meaning that he can get a better sneak attack on Gojo, on top of him already being worn down from using the 6 eyes for like 72 hours straight or something. But that doesn't take out Gojo immediately, and they continue to fight, and Toji is extremely impressive in this fight. Like, using his physicality, he's able to avoid essentially all of Gojo's attacks. And to make another long story short, Toji eventually like scatters Gojo's vision by like releasing a whole bunch of fly heads, and he uses this as a distraction to like come up on Gojo silently, but it's at this point that he's using the Inverted Spear of Heaven. And like I said, it stops all cursed techniques, even Limitless, so this allows him to just stab Gojo right in the throat and then in the arms, and then just finishes him off by stabbing him in the head with like a regular knife. This is an amazing sequence, one of my favorite in the series. But I guess you could say that Toji is like the reason why Gojo like ascends to the next level of power, I suppose, because it's this defeat / near death that like has Gojo have like this snap of realization to where now he just has essentially mastered the ability to use positive cursed energy along with like reverse curse technique, because he uses that to like heal himself and not die as a result of this. Then he comes back to fight Toji again, and it's at this point, now that he has, you know, positive curse technique down, he can use his reversal red against Toji. And in the rematch, Toji still looks good. You know, he's still the standard Toji, but it says Gojo has become too powerful at this point, and he's pretty much unhinged as a result of what happened. And it eventually leads to like Gojo using Hollow Technique Purple on him, and this just, you know, ends Toji, and this is where he dies. But it's at this point that we get like more insight into Toji, I suppose, because he says that, you know, normally he would like run away or something if he can't win because it's just about money, but he wanted to test himself against the most powerful sorcerer using the ultimate power of Limitless, and his pride kind of got the best of him, which led to his death. So as Toji's dying, he says, in 2 or 3 years, my kid will be sold off to the Zenin family, do as you please. And I'm pretty sure this is what leads to Gojo ultimately taking Megumi under his wing, leading to where the series is now. But another accomplishment that we can mark off for Toji here is that before he's killed by Gojo in this sequence, he also defeats Geto. And it's also said that like pretty much Gojo and Geto are the 2 strongest sorcerers at that point. So that's like the history of Toji, but he actually does come back in the Shibuya arc, surprisingly. And that's because there's like this cursed user Ogami who has this cursed technique called Seance, where she could basically bring back deceased people. And she could do this by like transforming herself or someone else into that deceased person. So she uses like her grandson as like a vessel to become Toji. But Toji, as we have established, is like a freak of nature. He's so incredibly powerful that like through the magic sorcery of this cursed technique in Toji, he takes over the body where it no longer has any will of itself, and he he becomes Toji once again, but kind of like a pseudo-zombie Toji. I mean, he's still kind of self-aware. But another aspect of the technique is that it'll still live on after the user dies, like Ogami. He kills Ogami, but the technique still lasts. But also, it will deactivate once the original host's body's cursed energy runs out. But remember, Toji had no cursed energy. So this creates some kind of crazy loophole within this technique, and Toji is just able to be Toji now. But like I said, he's not exactly Toji Zenin here, but he's kind of like a remnant of his personality or something. It's really hard to explain. He basically goes out and looking for like the strongest people to fight, but he eventually somehow comes across like the Dagon fight that's going on in the Shibuya arc, and he like forcefully goes inside of the domain and then takes Playful Cloud from Maki and like sharpens it and then just straight up kills Dagon with it. Like, this is such an amazing sequence. I love it so much. Toji is just so cool. And then after this, he like singles out Megumi and goes on to fight him. And then after they have like a back and forth, Toji asks Megumi like, hey, what's your name? And he says like Fushiguro. And he's like, oh, I'm glad, you didn't take the Zenin name. And then he just offs himself, and then the technique just dissipates, and then he reverts back to the normal body, and then Toji's gone once again. But yeah, that's Toji Fushiguro / Zenin. Let me know what you think about Toji in the comments. If you liked the video, guys, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.